Please like and subscribe to my channel.
Alright, so today we're diving into a pretty provocative YouTube video from a channel called BantuCityDiaries. Now, just to be clear, our goal here isn't to agree or disagree. We're here to neutrally break down the arguments and the data that the video presents, using its own logic to understand the case it's trying to make. So, right out of the gate, the video hits you with this question. It's a deeply unsettling and direct way to start, and it immediately sets the tone. The creator makes it really clear they believe no topic is off-limit and that there's no space for wokeism or political correctness in their analysis. And here it is. This quote is basically the bedrock of the entire video's argument. Think of it as the core thesis statement. It's this huge, sweeping claim that the rest of the video then spends its time trying to back up with data and examples. Okay, so you're probably wondering, how do they even begin to support a statement like that? Well, the video's answer is the economy. It turns to economic data, and this is where we'll look at the specific numbers and comparisons it uses as proof. The first piece of evidence the video throws out is this number, $2,000. So what is that? According to the source, that's the average GDP per capita across the entire continent of Africa. They use this figure as the starting point to paint a picture of widespread economic struggle. And then, to really drive the point home, the video makes this absolutely wild comparison. You've got one person, Elon Musk, on one side, and on the other, the entire region of West Africa. We're talking nearly 500 million people. The video claims his personal wealth is greater than their combined GDP. It's a pretty shocking comparison meant to show the sheer scale of the economic disparity they're talking about. And it doesn't stop there. The source just keeps layering on the examples. It says, Mark Zuckerberg is richer than the whole of the DR Congo. Then it zooms into the United States, claiming the two poorest counties there have black majorities. And then it zooms back out for a global comparison, asserting that even the poorest white countries in Europe are 10 times more developed than the richest black countries in Africa. Okay, so this next piece is where the video really starts trying to connect the dots of its argument. It brings up this table, and the claim here is pretty stark, that the 5 most affluent ethnic groups living in Africa are actually all non-black. It lists them out, basically saying, see, this isn't random, this is a pattern. All right, so after laying out that big economic picture, the video then zooms in. It basically takes us on a quick tour of the continent, going region by region to try and show how its theory plays out on the ground. First stop, Southern Africa. And the video does not mince words here. It comes right out with this blunt statement. The argument it makes is that South Africa's core infrastructure, its cities, its economic foundation, all of it was established under white leadership. And it claims the country has actually gone backwards in the 3 decades since that end. Then it turns to Zimbabwe to paint this really dramatic before and after picture. The narrative is basically this. Back when the economy was controlled by the white population, the country was supposedly clean, organized, and prosperous. And now? The video argues it plunged into chaos after that control was lost. So what about East Africa? Well, the video points to Seychelles and Mauritius as the only real economic successes in the region, but then it immediately labels them as exceptions. And why? Because, according to the source, their populations are predominantly Asian, which, in the video's logic, makes them different from the rest of the region. Now for Central Africa. The video presents us with what it frames as a paradox. It points to the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country that's bigger than Western Europe and just overflowing with natural resources. So the question the video asks is, with all that immense wealth in the ground, how is it possible that most of the population lives in extreme poverty, under $2 a day? At this point, you're probably thinking, okay, but what about colonization? What about the history of slavery? Well, the video anticipates that. This next part is all about tackling those common explanations head-on and, from its perspective, completely rejecting them. And it asks the question directly, is colonization to blame for all of this? Were the continent's problems, as the video puts it, all made in London, Paris, or Berlin? The video's answer is a hard no. It argues that while, yes, historical injustices definitely happened, things like the slave trade and colonization are no longer excuses. It says they don't account for what it calls the collective failures of modern Black African nations. To back this up, the video starts pulling in examples from all over the world. It says, hey, look at China. It was ravaged for centuries, but it recovered. Look at South Korea. It was brutally subjugated by Japan, and now it's a tech giant. Then it makes a really sharp contrast between Haiti, independent for over 200 years, and the much younger but far more prosperous Singapore. So if it's not external factors like colonization, then what is the problem according to this video? Well, this is where it gets to its final point, its own diagnosis of the root causes. It argues the problems aren't from the outside, but from the inside. And it lays out a whole list of what it sees as these internal deficiencies. We're talking a continent-wide lack of inventions in R&D and science and tech, a lack of industrialization and production, a lack of effective non-corrupt governments, no top-tier schools or universities. It even claims there's a failure to discover and mine their own natural resources without foreign assistance. And to really hammer home this point about a lack of internal research, the video uses this highly provocative example. It asserts that for centuries, Black Africans died from malaria without even knowing what was killing them, until, it claims, European colonizers came and discovered the cause. So where does that leave things? Well, the video wraps up by offering what it frames as a path forward, a way to command respect. It's basically a 3-step plan. Step 1, start making stuff. Get made in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya products on global shelves. Step 2, build rock-solid, transparent institutions. And Step 3, develop educational systems that produce top scientists from their own research, not just, in its words, regurgitating Western standards. And that brings us to the source's final challenging thought. It concludes that until these internal changes are made, until the production, the governance, and the innovation are achieved, all the economic data it presented will, in its own words, continue to point to a potential intellectual deficiency. A very controversial note to end on, to say the least.